It's reading time. Welcome to your readings for the week of the 21st through the 27th. It's the last official week of July. And, well, as usual, everything at once. So we got some stuff going on this week. Not too many challenges. Again, there's planets in Leo. There is Pluto, which is still in Aquarius, barely, but it doesn't matter because any planets that move into Leo are going to move into opposition with Pluto. That's happening still this week, and the moon is going to amplify that at the end of the week. So it's just going to suck for all of us. Okay, I'm an Aquarius. I'm right in there with you guys. Not too keen on it. Not much I can do. I have tried to talk to the planets about helping us out by not doing this, and they're just not listening. I don't know why. Anyways, let's go ahead and get to it. We are also going to be entering I do believe we're entering the shadow period of the Mercury retrograde this week as well. It starts in Virgo. It ends in Leo. It's going to be more Leo than Virgo, and will quite possibly move into opposition with Pluto. So it's going to directly affect Leos, obviously, as well as Aquarians. A little bit of Virgo to boot, and so we'll be dealing with that as well. The official retrograde starts. It's like hair in my mouth. I'm trying to get it, and it just doesn't want to go. The retrograde officially starts on the 5th. Okay, so we are entering the shadow period next week. We're not dealing with that this week. So that's there's some good news for you. Okay, let's get started as we always do with Darcy. Well, there's a couple of things going on. First of all, Mars is officially leaving Taurus this week. In fact, technically, today is leaving Taurus 0 degrees in Gemini. So that means that by the time we get to about Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's moving out of the cusp by Thursday, Friday. So not necessarily a bad thing, though. It is in a square with Mercury, and technically so is Uranus. So that's a challenge that's not necessarily going to go away. It is going to continue pretty much all week long. Uranus and Mars are focused on finances. Mercury is focused on those that support you. Now, we kind of went over this a little bit last week, so not much has changed. Basically, it's you've got plans, other people are not in line with those plans. That can be people that support you in terms of personal support. That could also be your job that's not being very supportive in terms of those financial plans as well. I mean, it could play out that way. Either they're not giving you the hours that you need, or they're dragging their behinds on making decisions in terms of raises or promotions or what have you. So it's very frustrating when that happens. I wouldn't say that it's a huge challenge. It can be, but because Mercury is involved in this and Mars is involved in this, especially at the beginning of the week, there's two things that really pop up that are very important to keep in mind in situations like this. The first thing is communication. We're going to enter the shadow period of the Mercury retrograde next week. Communication is going to be screwed up all across the board and unorganized because it starts in Virgo and ends in Leo. Both of those signs are very ego-driven signs. So you're going to be dealing with a lot of egotistical miscommunications to boot. The point is that there's two things. One, passive-aggressive communication doesn't work. If you want a raise, if you want a promotion, if you want something, you got to go in there and use your voice. You got to go in there and say, hey, this is what I want. Now, that doesn't guarantee that you get what you want, but you have a better shot than if you go, gee, it would be really nice to get a raise, because that leaves too many open holes for somebody to go, oh, I'm sure it would be nice, but you're not getting it, right? Mars, on the other hand, is a very aggressive influence. And so that also kind of reminds us that we don't want to go in and demand what we want either in an aggressive way, because that usually backfires on us. And it's actually kind of funny, because if you look at the people around you, and I'm actually one of these people myself, and we tend to be aggressive right off the bat, and that's not necessarily always a good thing, you know? It really depends on the circumstances. So aggression is, of course, necessary, but when the circumstances are correct. And, you know, diplomacy goes a lot farther than aggression. So I am learning to lead with diplomacy first and aggression only when needed. So, you know, tough independent women tend to be known as aggressive, or tend to be known as shit disturbers, what have you. You know, that old bullshit still exists. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Don't think we will see the end of it in either one of our lifetimes. So just keep that in mind. And of course, aggression is a good thing depending on how you use it. So just make sure that you plan it accordingly. You don't want to be aggressive in terms of allowing your emotions to take over and speak for you. That usually doesn't happen. But a little bit of direct and to the point aggression, that's a different story. Now, let's take a look at the good stuff. The good stuff being Uranus and Mars continuing to be in a grand sextile with Neptune and Pluto. And while Mars is moving out of this, Uranus continues to be in this grand sextile, because all three planets don't move very quickly. So again, the planets are continuing to work together. Pluto is focused on the home, and I know that a lot of what is around these questions and these issues are about, should I stay or should I go now? Neptune is focused on your day-to-day schedule. So what you do and how you do it, what are you doing in order to fix this problem? The thing is that Pluto is retrograde. So Pluto's all about change and transformation. And when it's retrograde, it really does feel like nothing is going to change. And that can get really frustrating very quickly. So my advice on that really is to, again, you want to minimize that aggression, because the energy is just going to burn you up and you're not going to be able to do anything, and focus more on what you can do, not what you can't do or what you need to get in order to make that happen, if that makes sense. Basically, your mind will work against you in a situation like that. So you want to be aware of that. The very end of the week on Saturday, the moon is officially entering Taurus again. And as it's coming into Taurus, amplifies a challenge that you have nothing to do with, at least until the moon comes in and says, now you do. And that is an opposition between the Sun and Pluto, which are in Aquarius and Leo. The moon comes in and amplifies this and makes this a much bigger challenge. Now, the moon's focus is on relationships. The sun's focus is on career. Pluto, again's focus is on home. This, to me, interpreting it for you, I kind of feel like a lot of this has to do with, you've got a plan, you're sort of working towards it, and then something comes up and screws everything up, because that's how life is, and that's what it always does, right? Now you can get all pissed off, you can be like all the other dingleberries out there and be like, well, I was going to do this, but then this happened and it's such bullshit. And no, we have to be flexible. And I know that's hard for fixed signs. Trust me, I'm one. It's really hard for fixed signs to be flexible. That's why we have to work that much harder to be flexible. And that's something that a lot of people don't take into consideration. They go, well, I don't like change, so I can't be flexible. No, that's not how that works. You have to work a little bit harder to be flexible. and change your plans when you need to change them. It does not mean that things are not going to work out the way that they are or the way that you want them to. Also, this is emotional. This is the moon. The moon has a tendency, or the emotions surrounding the moon have a tendency to garble what you're looking at and make it look absolutely impossible. So you give up when really it's not. It's just your emotions getting in the way. So just be aware of that. The more aware you are of that, the easier it will be to navigate through it, right? Awareness is always key. I find I can navigate myself out of a bad mood whenever I want. But some days I choose not to. Okay, that's fine. As long as I make better choices the next day or whatever, it doesn't matter. I basically what I'm saying is let yourself get all emotional and mad and have a big old fit about it. And then the next day, wake up and do something about it. That's your ticket to success always. The Five of Cups is the card that I am pulling for you today. And the Five of Cups in this position, what I like is if you see all the cups on the bottom, you've got two that are still standing, and the other ones were knocked over. And that's how life is. You have all of these different things, and a couple of things are going great. The other ones, not so much, right? It just kind of sort of happens. The Five of Cups in this position indicates hope for the future, valuable lessons learned from the past. And this is what these little dumped over cups are saying, right? Is that this is always going to happen. It's how you deal with the cups falling over that matters, not the fact that they actually did fall over. They're going to fall over. You're never going to get all your ducks in a row because all them ducks are going to be scattered all over the place. The sooner we realize that that's the reality of our lives, the easier it is from that point, because we're not trying to control everything. We're just trying to get through the day in the most successful way possible. And that's all you really need to look at. I think we humans put way too much pressure on ourselves, and that has a lot to do with it also. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Kendra, we have Mars officially leaving this week, technically officially gone, but not quite, because Mars kicks off this week today, 0 degrees in Gemini. So he is still influencing the cusp of Taurus, but he's not in Taurus anymore. And every day that he leaves, he gets further and further away. So by Thursday, his influence will start to not be felt quite as much as it has been. What's interesting is a lot of times when Mars is in a sign and it leaves, because of the amount of energy that he tends to represent when he is in a sign, you could feel a little bit of almost like no energy all of a sudden, like it's all just been sucked out of you. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, depending on the timing of it, of course. Obviously, if you're in the middle of 5 deadlines and you have all this stuff to do and your energy just depletes, that's not great. But it's not a bad idea towards the end of the week to just kind of sort of take some time off to yourself to regroup and rest up and, all that good stuff. As he's leaving, he and Uranus, who's nowhere near, well, I mean, close to leaving, but I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think I looked ahead and it's not happening this year. Uranus is also continues to be in a square with Mercury. And I do believe that Venus also joins that square at the end of the week as well. And Mercury's focus is on those that support you. Venus's focus later on in the week is on career, while Uranus is still focused on finances and dealing with those financial plans, the financial issues, et cetera, et cetera. So, two things. It does create a bit of a challenge because either your husband's not in line, your ideas and his ideas are not lining up. It could be the company. The company has said they're going to do these certain things and they haven't done it yet, and it creates a delay. We enter the shadow period of the Mercury retrograde next week. So with that being said, this is just the pre-shadow period week, right? So things are already going to start to get kind of screwy. The more calm you can feel, the more meditation, the more grounding and bubbling, the easier it is to navigate. And it's highly possible that a lot of times one of the reasons why we get so stressed out is because we don't want things to happen in the way that we can't control it. But of course, we both know that you can't control anything, right? So there's really no point in having that argument with yourself because you can't control it, even if you wanted to. So it's also good to remind yourself of that this week as well, as much as possible. Now, Uranus continues to be in a grand sextile with Pluto and Neptune, and Mars is still a part of that at the beginning of the week. So again, Pluto's focus is on the home, and being retrograde kind of means you can't make a lot of changes in the home. And that might actually be your saving grace, honestly, because if you're going in and part of your financial worry is things that you would like to get done in the house that just don't have to be done, table it for now, not forever, just for now. It's a stress that you're putting on yourself that doesn't need to be there. Neptune's focus is on your day-to-day schedule, and it's retrograde. Now, Neptune's retrogrades are very different than any other retrograde. It actually amplifies the intuitive properties of the planet. So your intuition is really important in terms of navigating your day-to-day schedule, especially towards specific goals like financial goals. So, for instance, you can avoid an argument with your husband if you are more focused on intuitively understanding where he's coming from instead of reacting to what he's saying and how he's saying it, if that makes sense. Finally, at the very end of the week, the moon is coming into Taurus. And because there is an opposition between the sun and Pluto in Leo and Aquarius, a Taurus moon is just going to amplify that, drag you into a mess that you weren't even a part of in the first place, and cause chaos, specifically because the moon's focus is on relationships. So if we're talking about a challenge that exists with your support system all week long, it could literally escalate to a huge argument at the end of the week, which we do want to try and avoid as much as possible, only because it takes up time and energy that, quite frankly, women who are awesome and wonderful and trying to save the world like us don't have time for. Okay. And that's what we have to keep reminding ourselves. We are always going to be emotional reactors because we're women. That's how we're built. It's who we are. Okay. But we don't have to be either. There is a better way. And if we choose to navigate it in a way that's less emotional and less stressful on ourselves, it also becomes easier to navigate through it. Specifically in this instance, because now, with the moon being in a T square with Pluto, which again is focused on the home, and the sun, which is focused on career, it's that pulling back and forth, which one is more important kind of a thing. And that's, I mean, you and I both know this is something that we've dealt with every day of our lives since we decided to get married and have children, right? It's that pull between, all the people that are important to us and our own careers and our own success and our own responsibilities. And it becomes very overwhelming very quickly. My suggestion is, Calgon, take me away for a minute, because in that argument, who loses out? We do. Every single time we're putting all of our energy into everybody else and not enough into ourselves. So just make sure that you are doing that. If you're doing that, you can probably navigate it a lot easier than if you're trying to make everybody happy, which of course we both know rarely ever works, right? So planet-wise, they're trucking along. I mean, it's not horrible, it's not great, it's not horrible. It just is what it is. And, whether the planets were influencing this or not, life has curveballs. Life always has difficulties and challenges. You and I both know it's how we navigate that counts more than anything. And we can do it with a lot of stress or a minimal amount of stress. We get to choose by our own reactions and our own actions how that looks and how that works, right? Okay, so let me go ahead. I'm going to pull you a card here. I see the Tower on the bottom, so that's good. We don't want him influencing anything. The moon, which is oddly enough ending the week in your sign. Now the moon in this position to me is like a full moon. So things may be dark, but it sheds enough light that you can see things that maybe you wouldn't be able to see if they were blacked out or dark a little bit. But also the moon's meaning subconscious feelings becoming confused by other emotional disturbances, insecurities, false friends, slander, and disillusionment. So this really, the moon and the moon, I feel like that's going to be the most difficult day, is the very end of the week on Saturday when the moon comes in. It's like it just throws everything into chaos. And when we're seeing things from an emotional point of view, we do become disillusioned. It's like we're not seeing it for what it is. We're seeing it per how our feelings are telling us we should be seeing it. And that's not exactly the honest way of looking at it, or the most truthful way of looking at it. So that's actually a really good warning in terms of making sure that you have some sort of, I wouldn't say control over it, but kind of work through your emotions first before you broach the subject to make it easier all the way around. Okay, that's what I have for you, my friend. Moving on to Jeannette. Welcome, Mars, coming into Gemini this week. Actually, we're kicking off the week with Mars officially in Gemini. And he's coming into Gemini with his own particular set of problems, but also very helpful ways at the same time as well. So, but let's start with Jupiter, because Jupiter continues to be in a square with, what's it called? Saturn. Thank you very much. Brain took a vacation there for just a minute. Is in a square with Saturn. And that's actually very interesting. Jupiter is all about growth and expansion, continuing to focus that energy on your finances. So financial growth. Saturn is focused on those you love, is retrograde, is all about responsibility. And when it's retrograde, either you're not taking your responsibility seriously, which I doubt, or you're taking on responsibilities that don't belong to you, which I can definitely see you possibly doing, especially around your family, your kids, your mom, et cetera, et cetera. And I know you've got a lot of things going on in terms of your health, going to doctor appointments, trying to find more work. You want to make sure this challenge is all about making sure that you are not adding to the problem, that you're not drawing boundaries with people who should have boundaries. I mean, let's face it, you love your grandkids. You love to spend time with your grandkids. Don't blame you. But if your kids, and this is just an example, if your kids are constantly reaching out because they need babysitters all the time, they're getting in the way of what you need to get done, right? And you may be confusing your love of your grandchildren and wanting to spend time with them with not laying down proper boundaries for your kids, or they could be using the grandkids, and as a manipulation tool against you. So you just want to make sure, I mean, life is hard as it is. Having other people coming in and dictating your life doesn't help that. It makes it more difficult, and it puts you in a more difficult spot than you really need to be. And quite honestly, with everything that you have going on now, you don't really have a lot of space, time, or energy to take on any more than you already have. So boundaries are important. Obviously, if it's really important, fine, but don't let other people take advantage of your good nature. That's really what this challenge is all about. Mars is in a square with Mercury. Next week, we enter the shadow period of the Mercury retrograde, where Mars is going to continue to be in a square with him. So that kind of sort of just throws you right into Mercury retrograde madness, unfortunately. Mercury's focus is on those that support you. And Mars is focused on finances also. So it does bring up a challenge when it feels like the people that are supposed to be supporting you really aren't, right? Well, on the flip side, if they're constantly draining you for everything that you can possibly give them, they're not supporting you. So this just adds another layer to that challenge. It doesn't really add another challenge to it. It just amplifies that challenge. But Mars is also moving into your sign in a grand sextile with Pluto and Neptune. Now, this is a very helpful aspect. And again, we're talking about money. Pluto's focus is on the home, which to me, in your position, does indicate the possibility of making money from home, just saying. And then there's Neptune. Neptune is all focused on your day-to-day activities, what you are putting into your success. I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I have been uber focused. Let's just get my stuff done today. And oh my God, I'm rocking it and getting all of this stuff done, right? Wrote 3 books, everything is great, right? And then I've been on the other side of the spectrum where my kids, my husband, the boss, everybody, my mother, everybody's like out for what they're just sucking me dry with all of the stuff that they need. And I can't say no. So it's taking away from all of the stuff that I could be doing that would bring me success, right? So I've been on both sides of the spectrum. What I can tell you is it feels a hell of a lot better to get your shit done than it does to put it off and then blame all these other people for not getting it done. It's not their fault. It's yours because you didn't put down boundaries. Okay. That's the toughest lesson that I had to learn in my lifetime, because that's the truth. And I think that we as human beings allow that to happen because we want to point the finger of not being successful at somebody else rather than ourselves. So we wind up allowing that to happen. But we also want to avoid being that person that's just a jerk and never has time for anybody and blah, blah, blah. I'm so there right now. Okay. I feel terrible. But you know what? The real people in my life are not complaining about it. They're not, going around talking about what a horrible person I am because, I'm putting all of my energy into my success right now. They're not, that's always a big fear that we have. And the truth is that the people that do that are people that were out to use you in the first damn place. Okay. So I've had a couple of those, and yeah, they are the biggest mooches in my life, to be honest with you. And that's why they're complaining. But the people who want me to succeed, they're not complaining. They're happy for whatever time they can get when they can get it. And I try very hard to give it to them as often as I can, even though it's not very much and it's not as much as I would like. So take that. Okay. Take that. Let's take a look at your card here and see what we got here. Da, 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 the King of Wands in reverse. So the wands are the fire element of the minor cards. The kings and the queens, of course, are the leaders. The King of Wands in this position indicates a lack of patience, volatile temper, and inability to see others' point of view. Now, two things about that. One, this could be somebody around you. Okay. And I'm sure you can think of at least 2 or 3 people that it could be. But this is also what happens when we spread ourselves too thin and we become this person. So it's definitely very easy to go, oh yeah, that's my daughter or my husband or whoever, right? Without looking at ourselves. And when our energy is spread too thin, we get crabby. You can't say that you don't. I know that you do. I do all the time. When my energy is spread too thin, I get really, really crabby, and then nobody wants to be around me. So you can avoid that again by making sure that what's important in your life that you need to get done is done, and everybody else's needs go on the back burner or only important when they need to be important, not just because they want to go take a vacation for a month and want somewhere to dump their children. We've all been there. I mean, I used to love dumping my kids for the summer, but I also would take into consideration if their grandparents had things to do. I would like to say that I would not have whined and manipulated them into doing what I wanted them to do simply because this is what I wanted. So that's what I have for you, my friend. Moving on to Connie. Well, here we go. The sun is in Leo. It's Leo season. That's awesome. Until you remember that there is a planet in Aquarius, which is your opposite sign, me, of course, and your sun. And it's Pluto. It's not moving very fast, so it's not going to move out of the way. That opposition is going to happen for the next couple of weeks. Also, Mercury, we're entering the shadow period of the Mercury retrograde next week. Mercury is moving into Virgo this week, but it will move back into Leo before that retrograde is over, and quite possibly move back into that opposition again later on. So bottom line here is whenever planets are in opposition of each other, it creates chaos. It creates a challenge. And this one in particular, Pluto's focus is on the home and it's retrograde. Pluto is all about change and transformation. Retrograde means nothing is changing, which is frustrating. The sun, on the other hand, is where you shine, and it's focused on career. So the big thing about this is, and the big thing that concerns me for you about this is that your career, once again, is affected by either things at home that you can't change, like, for instance, repairs that need to be made that you just can't make right now, or anything that has to do with your son. And because of the fact that your sun is an Aquarius, and because of the fact that it's evidently clear that he won't change, worrying about that or focusing on that is going to affect your success in your career, regardless of which career it is. Okay. Because I know we have not been able to talk on the phone the last couple of days, but I do know that the last time that we did talk on the phone, we talked about some conversations that had taken place between you and your son. And so there has been some issues with how do we deal with that. You know that he is who he is, and being a fixed sign also, Leo is a fixed sign, Aquarius is a fixed sign. Fixed signs always abhor change. Okay. They like things to stay the same. They like their routine. They don't like leaving what they've already got set up, even if what they've already got set up isn't flipping working. Okay. It is a self-sabotage that almost every person born under a fixed sign does. And a lot of it has to do with fear of change. So there's a couple of ways that I can interpret this. One, we're going back to allowing problems with family members to get in the way of your financial and career success. Or we're allowing the mindsets that you don't want to change because you like the way it is to get in the way of your success in your career. Either way, it's a good opportunity for you to meditate and decide which one it is. Now, that being said, we can't go if these things were different. You already know this. If these things were different, it would be easier because we know damn well that that's not the case. It's all about letting it go. It's all about releasing the responsibility of holding on to the problem anymore. Yes, you love your son. Yes, you love your grandson. Yes, you want to be a part of their lives. Yes, there's so many different things that you would love to have in this situation that you're not getting. And yes, you deserve all those things. But none of that matters when it comes down to it, because that mentality is what keeps us holding on to something that is just burning a hole right through our hands. It also gets in the way of us making changes. It's just all bad. And it's only going to get worse at the beginning of the end of the week when the moon moves into a square with both of these planets and amplifies it. And the moon's focus is on relationships. So guess who's going to create the emotional trauma? It's going to be somebody that you're in some sort of relationship with, whether it's your son, whether it's something that Kylan calls you and tells you. We have been through this already. You get this information and you have that what the actual fuck moment, and then you got to take the time to work through it, right? We want to minimalize that time as much as possible, and that's really what we've been working towards a lot lately, is the minimalization of that time. We can't make it go away because clearly it's not. We just have to minimalize the time that we're putting into that, so it's not taking up huge amounts of time. You don't want to put yourself in a position anymore to say, I could be more successful if my family was better, because we can't use that excuse anymore. I mean, you've done it. It hasn't changed anything. Why continue that pattern? I do see that part of the issue is you got a pretty busy week work-wise. Not tomorrow, because you just said tomorrow's an office day, so maybe not tomorrow. But I do see quite a few appointments this week. So you always want to make sure that you bring your A game to those appointments and not your baggage. And some days are easier than others. I get that. Saturday might be almost impossible because of the moon coming in to influence this particular problem. So Calgon moments, Calgon moments, Calgon moments. It's easier said than done. But a lot of when the words let it go are used, has everything to do with letting go of your preconceived ideas of how it should be. Because while you hold on to those preconceived ideas, you can't let it go. You can't change it. You can't continue in a new way because you're still holding on to old baggage. So we have to revert back to the old way of doing things. Send them love, send them protection, send them clear sight. and release it from your control, especially because you don't have any anyways, if that makes sense. In terms of your work schedule, I do see almost at least one appointment every day, maybe two in one of the days. And it's a mix of, I wouldn't say good and bad, but maybe profitable and not quite so profitable, if that makes sense. So a couple of these maybe not so profitables could be people that have rescheduled several times already, and they're probably going to do it again. Whereas the ones that seem a little bit more profitable, you may not sign that day, but you definitely get a better start in terms of connecting with them, which is good. I also am just going to throw out a challenge to you, and it is going to be a challenge because not how humans operate on normally. We always focus on the negative and not the positive. So my challenge for you this week is at the end of the day, rather than reviewing all of the crazy messed up shit that happened that day, focus on the one good thing that happened. And if there wasn't something, then make it happen. It's a good way to start yourself looking at things in a more positive way rather than always focusing on how badly things are going. Because when we focus on how badly things are going, we never get out of that. And that's just a miserable existence, as you probably well know already. So we want to try to nip that in the bud as much as possible. And as you can see, I didn't get my walls painted yet, but I will in a couple of weeks. So 10 of Wands. Wands are the fire element of the minor cards. And so there's a tremendous amount of energy that goes into them. Can be emotional energy, not necessarily, but it can be. The 10 of Wands in this position indicates taking on more than one can handle. That's kind of funny. Not funny, haha, but funny in an ironic way. That could be interpreted as more appointments that you can handle. But it can also be interpreted as you don't have that many appointments, but you're still carrying around or continuing to carry around other things you have no control over. So, it seems to be a trigger, unfortunately. It's wonderful for you to talk to Kylan, but whenever you talk to him, you have to hear about his parents, and that triggers you back into the tornado, the merry-go-round, and that's walking around with more than you can handle because you can't focus properly on your work and your responsibilities and the things that you have to do because you're so busy working through this. And then of course it has its physical effects on the body as well, which we both know about and you've been experiencing a lot this past week. So you have control over how much you hold on to per every conversation and how much time it takes before you put it away. And that's more than anything, the more you manage the time on that, the easier things will be. So that's what I have for you. I do think you might get some good news from Kylan. Not sure what exactly, but I do think that there is some good news from him coming. Moving on to Jenny. It is officially Leo season. That's awesome. Too bad the sun's moved right into opposition with Pluto, which is in Aquarius, which is where I am, which means we're both screwed. At least for a couple of weeks, because Pluto ain't going nowhere. It changes a degree every 4 weeks or so. So it's there for the long haul. And we have to wait for the sun to move out of oh, sorry about that. The sun to move out of opposition with Pluto instead of Pluto doing anything to help that. And next week, we move into the shadow period of the Mercury retrograde. Now, it starts in Virgo, but it ends in Leo. And chances are it's going to move into opposition with Pluto before it's done. So we will be dealing with this again, unfortunately. And the challenge here with this really has a lot to do with that work-life balance. As usual, the sun is focused on career, Pluto is focused on the home, and Pluto is retrograde. It's all about change and transformation, which means no changes are going to be made. Things are the way they are, and there's nothing you can do about that. You can rail against it, you can get mad about it, you can pound your fists on the desk if you want to. It's not going to change. So with that being said, this becomes very difficult because when we refuse to take our focus off of what we want instead of just letting it be the way that it is. That's hard. It's hard, I think, for any human being to have to make that decision. um it's especially difficult for signs like Leo and Aquarius. We do tend to be fairly egotistical signs, both of us. Not that it's impossible, but it does make it a little bit more difficult. We tend to get in the way more, I think. But as much of a challenge as this is, it could be worse. And at the end of the week, guess what? It becomes worse as the moon moves into Taurus and amplifies it, makes a much bigger challenge. And the moon brings relationships into the mix. So now you're torn between your responsibilities at home, your responsibilities at the office, and now a couple of your friends are just like, Jenny, you have no time for us anymore. You don't love us. And it's like really overwhelming. All of a sudden, everybody is pulling at you, and you're just like, Calgon, take me away, please. Just make it all disappear. The truth of the matter is that I don't see anything in particular. There's no tax season right now. I mean, obviously there's still stuff that needs to be done. And I'm not saying that you're not busy, but I'm not seeing anything in particular that's causing this problem. To me, it just feels like out of the blue, all of a sudden, it seems like everybody needs a piece of Jenny, and Jenny doesn't even have time for herself. And so, my advice for that really is to take the time when you can take it. It's very important, right? And you can't give everybody everything that they want. That's just impossible. I mean, that's crazy talk when you think about it. Nobody can do that. But you can give what you can and not more. Again, boundaries are everything. Because if you don't put boundaries on people, they just keep on going and they keep on going and they keep on going. And some of those people I have seen in my life, they try to not just take from you, but they try to push everybody else away from you so that they're the only ones that can take from your energy. They don't have to deal with the excuses of other people anymore. It's all about them. And that can happen in terms of your personal relationships. That can be a work relationship also. Somebody that just keeps taking up your time, a client that thinks that you work solely for them, or maybe you do. But you've agreed on a certain amount of hours and they're trying to take more. There's a million ways that this can play out. I do see it being a professional thing though. The sun is in a trine, actually in a grand sextile with Jupiter and Mars and Neptune. Neptune is focused on your day-to-day schedule, and Jupiter and Mars are focused on money. aggressively expanding your bank account. So if we look at this from the flip side here, and this is a professional person that's taking up all of your time, seems to me like they're paying you pretty well to take up all of your time. So people also have to understand that, this may not be a long-term thing. It just may be something that's taking up all of your time right this minute. And, but this is what you need to do in order to meet your financial goals. So everybody just kind of has to wait their turn and have a little patience. And there's always at least one person who does not want to practice that patience thing. They want what they want right now, and you just can't accommodate it. The good news is that you have a really good team there, a busy bee to help you out. That definitely helps. Make sure you are grounding and bubbling. Make sure you are taking your Calgon, take me away time as much as you possibly can. All of these little things really do help minimize the stress of being extremely busy. But you cannot be successful if you're not constantly working at it. And I am telling you, I'm right there with you. I am exhausted in every possible way. My husband and I finally got an afternoon off yesterday, the two of us together, so that we could be like, oh, that's what you look like. It was awesome. I'm paying for it today, but that's neither here nor there. We make these things happen and we set boundaries on what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. And that's the only way to make something this crazy work. It really is. You just got to jump on those opportunities as and when you can, because if you don't, you get stressed the F out, and that's not fun either. That causes psychological issues, mental health issues, physical health issues. There's a list as long as your arm of what kind of issues that it creates. So there's your reminder. Self-care is really important. This is very interesting. This is not a card I would think to pick up for you. It's the Fool. And not only is it the Fool, but he's a reverse. Now, when the Fool comes up like this, it's a warning that you might be in danger of making decisions based on how you feel in the moment. And that could be foolish. But when he comes in reverse, he's already a rolling nightmare of foolishness. And I don't think that this is you. I feel like this is coming from somebody else. And I'm not saying that you never make foolish decisions, because we're human. That's just too much to ask, okay? But I don't think, okay, well, it could be you if you're so overworked and you're not keeping up with your self-care that you wear yourself out. Then you can literally just get to a point where you snap on your very important client, which could be considered foolish, right? Or you're dealing with somebody who you've been excusing their behavior for a long time. And because you've been excusing their behavior, they are continuing to act more and more foolish. And not only are they harming themselves, but they put you or yours in harm's way at the same time. So if that makes any sense at all, distance yourself from that person as much as you possibly can to protect yourself, your investments, your home, etc., etc., etc. Also have to just add this too. You're very busy. And I'm seeing a client specifically that always has an excuse and never has their shit together. And, you don't have time to work twice as hard to continue to deal with the same flipping problem with this person over and over again. And it might just be time for you to put your foot down and say, look, okay, I don't have time, and it doesn't matter how much you pay me. I don't have time to keep doing the same thing over and over again to help you save your own butt. So this is the last time, and I'm not doing it again. You're going to have to figure this one out for yourself. So, because they are wasting your time. That's what I have for you. It sounds like tons of fun. If it makes you feel any better, Pluto's in Aquarius, okay? It's the same shit over here. And I have a few of those, just saying. Okay, moving on to Linda. Mercury is moving into Virgo at the very end of the week. So we're talking the very end of the week. There's no other planets in Virgo until the very end of the week, except for, of course, Juno and the dark moon, who are continuing to influence things in Virgo like they have been. Mercury's shadow period begins next Monday. So we're not beginning it this week. We are preparing for it for next week. And I'm kind of bringing it up because I know that you've got a lot going on right now and you want to get all of that taken care of as much as you possibly can before Monday next week, because that's when the delays start to happen. That's when the miscommunication starts to happen. The retrograde starts in Virgo. So we're going to have some time in Virgo, but it's predominantly a Leo retrograde. So that first week, week and a half, and the shadow period, the first part of the shadow period, is definitely going to be Virgo influenced a lot. So it's going to, pardon me, directly affect everything that you're trying to do. But Mercury retrogrades are not always a bad thing. Sometimes Mercury retrogrades fix problems that we didn't think could be fixed. So it might actually be just the right energy that you need to get that job that you're looking for, the one that you really want, and not just whatever you can get. So it doesn't mean that these things are not going to happen when Mercury is retrograde. So I don't want to put you in a panic of, I need to get this sorted out in a week. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. But anything that you know is going to take time, that there might be delays, et cetera, the more you can get done this week, the better. That's really what I'm saying there. Now, in terms of Juno and the dark moon's influences, Juno still continues to be influencing your secret closet, bringing up triggers around relationships. What's interesting about this is it's one of those really annoying opportunities to look at the part that we play in our relationships. Because a lot of times when we're in a relationship, we are pointing the finger at the other person as to what they're doing to sabotage the relationship. And on the other side, they're pointing the finger directly back at you because it's your fault that the relationship is getting sabotaged. So this is an opportunity to continue to look at you and how you might be causing some of the problems within these relationships, if that makes sense. Now, I'm not saying take on stuff that isn't yours. I am saying to be honest about who you are and what you're putting into the relationship specifically. That's really important. And there is no growth until we can be honest with ourselves and look at what we're doing and the choices that we make as honestly as possible, instead of covering it up and justifying it, which is a Virgo trait. I mean, we can't get away from that. The dark moon is focused on your those that support you. And the dark moon is all about change, and she is not retrograde anymore, not by the end of the week anyway. So there's a lot, it's almost like a lot of energy going towards dumping the old and creating a new support system. And it's not even about creating the new. It's literally, honestly, looking at the people who have claimed to be supportive and going, you know what, you're not. Kick rocks, out. I am cleaning out this closet to make room for the people who are actually Team Linda and not team themselves and whatever Linda can do for them. kind of a thing. So I really feel like this kind of exercise is actually going to help, because a lot of times when we're going through something and there's delays and we're waiting, even if, let's say, for example, you still have Toastmasters around and you're still dealing with that thing. I don't know if you are or not, but let's just say it's still there and you're still dealing with it. And you're still dealing with personalities who, claim to be there and claim to be supportive and claim to be doing their jobs, but they're not. Okay. And so you're having to put double the work that you're not getting paid for into it, right? This does not create a successful energy. It creates an energy of spinning around, chasing your tail. And you want to eliminate that because clearly it doesn't work. So if you're still holding on to that for whatever reason, that in itself might be getting in the way of you successfully getting into something else. So that's where the dark moon comes in and is like, check your priorities, check your support system, check and make sure that everybody is on board in the same place, and you're not fighting against somebody who is all about them and not about helping you get where you need to go, if that makes sense. I'm also seeing an opportunity presenting itself through one of all of these different organizations that you have been a part of that may generate some money for you. It may be working at home or your home office or what have you, instead of actually going out to work every single day. But there's something there. It's kind of behind a dark curtain right now. You have to peek through the curtain. It might even be something that presented itself a while ago that you said, no, I don't have time for. That might be something to revisit. The Ace of Wands in reverse. New beginnings, but actually delays and frustrations instead of new beginnings. So that tells me that another possible disappointment is coming up. Setbacks and delays, waste, need to reconsider plans and ventures. Two things. Virgos are not obsessive. Of course. No, Virgo obsesses over things, right? When you get into this space where you need money, of course you're going to start obsessing over it, right? You have to be really careful not to do that as much as possible, because it's not helping you. Even though you've done it your whole life, it's never helped you. You think maybe it's helping you, it's never helped you. Okay. So to try and avoid that as much as possible, your brain is working against you. Okay. The other thing is, look at everything that says no. Thanks for applying. Thank you, drive through. Everything that says no is not the opportunity for you. Okay. And keep on going. It is going to happen. It should have happened by now. I thought for sure it would happen by now, but it is going to happen. And it's going to be the perfect opportunity, better even than what you had before. In fact, there might even be a possibility of renegotiating that job too. And that's why things aren't moving in all these other places. So there's always a method to the madness. That's how you have to look at it. Okay, I'm going to take a little break and then I'm going to come back and get the rest of these done. Okay, it's Maddie's turn. Okay, so we have Mercury moving into moving into Virgo at the end of this week. Ending the week in 1 degree Virgo is Mercury. And next Monday starts the shadow period of the retrograde. It's first week and a half, and that's on top of the week-long shadow period, is in Virgo. And then it moves into Leo. And so it's not a full Virgo retrograde this time because we've had way too many of those. We don't need any more. either way, Leo's pretty egotistical sign, so it's going to have its problems, and it will directly affect you because it starts off in Virgo, and unfortunately starts like right when you guys are camping. Yay! On that Monday that you guys are there at the campsite, as a matter of fact. So hopefully it doesn't cause any issues, but take my advice as a mom. Check your fluids in your car, check your tires, check anything that could go wrong with your car, okay? Because it's going to be a long trip. You're going all the way to Modesto. You're coming out here. You're going back to Modesto. You're going camping. You're going home. You don't want to find out the hard way that there's an issue with your tire, that you're low on fluids, because finding out the hard way when you're low on fluids means you have much bigger problems and they're a lot more expensive to fix. And I'm sure you know that. But let me be a mom for just a minute and remind you of those things before you come down here. It's really, really important. We don't have any planets in Virgo, like I said, until the end of the week when Mercury moves in. We still have Juno and the dark moon in there, and Juno continues to be influencing your secret closet, bringing up triggers, especially around relationships. I had to say, I reached out to see if you were still watching the videos. And I'm glad I did, because you couldn't find them all of a sudden. Because when I not that I need clarification, okay? Because I don't necessarily, but I recorded your video and a couple of things came up, including your mom drinking again, which I hope she's not doing a lot of. We'll just put it that way. She looks great though. I mean, I did talk to her and get some pictures of her, and she looks great. I'm very proud of her. And that, and in terms of relationships, and Daniel mentioned that whole alcohol thing, and I was like, it's so weird. That was kind of in the reading. She's still watching those videos, so hopefully you found it and you're back on track with the videos and all that stuff. Because Juno it represents how we relate to others, and it's all about relationships. And when it's influencing your past, your emotional past, it brings up triggers of other relationships. And this could be any kind of relationships, your relationships with your parents, your friends, your cousins, right down to the relationship that you have with your boyfriend. And I know he's moved in, and I know that, when you're in a relationship with somebody at first, especially when you're young, you have all these preconceived ideas about how it's going to be. When you move in together, you really start to get to know each other too well. That way. And you really see a lot of things about that person that maybe you don't like so much. And so it's really important to weigh out the good and the bad in that relationship in order to make sure that there's more good than bad in that relationship. But specifically that relationship that you're in, possibly bringing up triggers of past relationships. Now, this is a very confusing gray area for a lot of people because of two things. One, they'll see triggers and ignore them. Well, that was then, this is now, right? Triggers of past experiences happen to give you red flags, to watch out for certain personality traits that you didn't like before and you don't want to deal with again. And hoping that things change does not necessarily mean that they will change, okay? In fact, it's usually the opposite. The other problem with the way that people see triggers is that they'll see every single thing that the person does as a trigger from the other relationship, which puts you in a panic and puts you in one of those situations where you are too picky about every little thing And you can never be in a relationship because you just can't. And this is actually a Virgo trap. A lot of Virgos find themselves in this place. Just ask John, okay? Because John is a Virgo in this place now. He has had several relationships, but every single one of them is just like there's something off, there's something not right, they're too clingy, they're too this, they're too that. He's obsessing over the little details, right? And not necessarily looking at the bigger picture. You don't want to be on either end of that spectrum. You want to be right in the middle, okay? Some triggers from past relationships are not that big of a deal. Okay, so the person is lazy. That sucks, right? You can kind of work around that until you can't pay the bills anymore and you're supporting them, then it's a problem, right? But little things like your parents, right? For example, your mom's always harped on your dad doesn't do anything when he comes home, but he wears his ass off and has always provided for the family. So, yes, it's annoying that when he comes home, he just wants to lay on the couch and watch TV. I get that. And by the way, this isn't a bitch that every woman on the planet has, okay? Because we're not allowed to go home and drink a beer and watch TV for the rest of the night. We have to clock out of our normal jobs and clock into that one, right? So that is a challenge, a difficulty. And in some cases, we put ourselves in that situation, which is also not necessarily a good idea, by the way, but you do you. So you want to be in the middle. You can't be too picky about every little thing. You have to be able to let some things slide. But if you're ignoring things that are big things that you hope will change eventually, that is a problem. So it's always good to kind of take some time to just really sort of think about and meditate on these things, because eventually you don't want to waste years coming to this conclusion. And a lot of people do, unfortunately. And especially, I remember being your age with Uncle Dave and thinking that everything that was bad in that moment was just going to go away once we got married. That's not the case at all. Men take a long time to grow up, if they ever do, for one. And number two, women do this really stupid thing where they seem to think that the man just needs a woman to teach them and change them. And then what these women wind up actually doing in the long run is changing this man from the person that they fell in love with, somebody completely different that they don't like anymore. And you definitely don't want to do that either. So, all relationships, there's a lot of bullshit that you don't want to deal with. There is a lot of bullshit that you don't want to deal with. As long as it's not abusive or controlling or any of those other bad things, then the little stuff is just the little stuff. And it's annoying, but it can just stay that way because you're not going to be in a relationship that doesn't have annoying tendencies. I mean, it just comes with the territory. It's when it is constantly making you feel like you're not good enough, or like they're trying to keep you down, or what have you. That's when it starts to become a problem. When it starts to create mental health issues for you, then it's a problem that needs to be addressed, if that makes sense. So that's Juno. The dark moon adds another interesting layer to this because the dark moon is no longer retrograde. She's all about making drastic changes, and her influence is the same as Mercury's. It's on your support system. And Mercury is in a square with Uranus and Mars. So as it comes into your sign at the end of the week, the support, it's like you don't have a support system when it comes to meeting your financial goals. Now, again, have to drive this in and be a mom here for a second. Never a good idea to put all of the responsibility of your financial goals on your partner. Trust me when I say that eventually it's going to come back to bite you in the ass, okay? You have to be responsible for that. And just because the person you're in a relationship with that person does not necessarily mean that they're on the same page. In fact, they probably never will be. Uncle and I have been together almost 30 years, still not on the same page. Your parents have been together over 30 years, still not necessarily on the same page, right? And part of that is because we don't communicate with each other like we should. Part of that is we're communicating too much and the other person's not listening. You've seen it. You grew up with it. You know what it looks like, right? Uncle Dave is like the best guy in the world, but he makes dumb decisions when it comes to money. So we do fight over that a lot, okay? The biggest mistake I ever made was putting all that responsibility in his hands and not maintaining that responsibility for myself. Doesn't matter what the reasons are. You can justify my reasons for doing it. That doesn't matter. The point is that at the end, it came back to bite me in the butt big time. Okay. And I want to help you avoid that happening because it's not 1955 anymore. We don't have to rely on them for our financial security. And even in 1955, a lot of women lost everything because they were forced to rely on these idiots, so to speak, for all of their financial needs. And people make stupid choices, and those choices don't work out, and they lose their houses, and they, I mean, that story has gone on over and over and over again. So when it comes to your support system, the dark moon is all about making massive changes in your support system. If somebody is not supporting you, don't rely on them anymore. Find somebody who is supporting you. And I'm not saying go into another relationship. I'm saying if your man can't finance or emotionally support you because he's a man, then go to somebody else for emotional support. If your parents can't financially support you anymore, then you have to figure out who the right person is to help you find a job where you can support yourself. We always make the mistake of continuing to find or to insisting on drawing the support on the people that are around us, and it's just not, it doesn't always work out. And it's not necessarily because the people are bad, it's just that they're not capable of doing it, and that's what it comes down to. Okay, let me pull a card. Done being a mom and lecturing you. We'll stop now. But I will say, all of this is stuff that I learned growing up as a woman and being an adult and having to deal with the world. And the world sucks way more than it ever has before. And to be honest with you, when I was your age, I didn't listen to my parents, my grandparents. I didn't listen to anybody. I knew best. And I was wrong, like so wrong. I didn't know anything. And you don't realize that until you get into your 30s and your 40s and you look back and go, man, I was pretty dumb. Yet I thought I was the smartest person in the world. King of Pentacles in reverse is the card that I am picking up, and we're talking about our financial goals here. So that's very interesting. Be wary of schemes to make money quickly. They don't exist. Okay, I'm just going to tell you right now. It doesn't matter how good they seem, they don't exist. Also, stubbornness and possessiveness are kind of play into this card here. So we're all stubborn. That's neither here nor there. Possessiveness is the key here. One of the things that kills a relationship is somebody being controlling. If you're the one that's controlling all the money, for example, that's going to have an effect on him and the way that the two of you communicate. If he's doing that, that's going to have an effect on you and the way that the two of you communicate. Nobody should be possessive in that relationship, whether it's around money or anything else. So if that is something that's coming up, nip it in the bud now, sooner rather than later. The longer you wait to fix this problem, the bigger problem it's going to be and the harder it's going to be to fix. So that's what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Regina, we have no planets in Scorpio this week, which is kind of nice. We do continue to have Pallas Athene, and Pallas Athene's no longer retrograde, focused on the past. She's fighting against her past. This is an interesting position for her to be in because you can't fight against the past. It already happened. There's nothing you can do to change it. But what you can do is put all of your energy into eliminating its control over you now. That's what's really important here. And I think this is the lesson that she's come in to teach for this week specifically. It's hard not to focus on all of the things that you don't like about how things were, but it's a wasted energy and time, as we both well know. So it doesn't really get you anywhere. It's better to let it be what it is and let it go. And I know that that's difficult because you live in your mother's house. Sure, you're still cleaning out all the stuff of hers and I'm sure all of those things are bringing up triggers. And and when you think that you've gotten all the triggers out, one's going to pop up somewhere. It's going to be hiding in the corner or something like that. So it starts to become difficult to be able to actually not continue to be pulled into the abyss of your past triggers, if that makes sense. But let's talk triggers for a minute, because when we don't deal with the past, it continues to trigger in various other places, in various other circumstances in our lives. So for instance, an abandonment issue in a young age, and your favorite boss, the only one that you can count on and rely on, all of a sudden announces that he's moving to another state and he's leaving, and that triggers an abandonment issue. And when that abandonment issue is triggered, you will react in an emotional way to something that should not be reacted to in an emotional way. So it's very important to work through the trigger and understand where it's coming from rather than react to it. And we react out of fear. We always react out of fear because we don't want things to change, especially fixed signs. Scorpio is a fixed sign. Scorpios don't like change, right? Because of the fact that it's fixed sign. Doesn't mean that our lives never change. That's not how life works. Life is constantly changing all the time. There's a couple of things that I do see, though, because I don't want to continue to harp on this like you're not doing it. I see that you are doing it. And one thing that I am seeing is that you're taking control of your life, of your house, of your finances as much as you possibly can. Yes, there are some things that kind of sort of come in there and screw things up. That's just how it works, but you're navigating these changes in a much easier way, which is really good. It doesn't mean we can't slip into bad habits. So it's really important to be aware of that possibility so that when you do, you can go, "Oh wait, I just slipped into a puddle of past bullshit." And now I'm choosing to sit in the puddle for 5, 6, 7 days instead of an hour or two while I cry my eyes out and move on from it. It's about the management of the time it takes, not eliminating that from happening ever, because there's no way to eliminate that from happening ever. It's impossible, right? Our trauma sticks with us for life. We have to come up with a way of living like that without it getting in the way, basically. The other thing that I'm being shown is I kind of feel like you come to a new understanding with your husband. But you also don't want to be lulled into a false sense of security either. It's that quintessential thing that we females go through where we finally get where we want to be and we go, good, I can relax now because things are exactly the way I want them. And then the minute we get in lulled into that false sense of security, boom, they go stupid again. So, and you've been through that up and down, up and down, up and down already. And I feel like now you're like, okay, I'm not going to fall for that one again, right? It's a different way of approaching it without putting the rose-colored glasses on, which I think is great. And you have such a very unique way of doing it too, which I think is brilliant because the more unique of a way you have to do it, the more you will actually continue to use this process because you're seeing that it works for you. It may not work every single time, but it works the majority of the time. And don't downplay it when it doesn't work. That doesn't mean that it doesn't work anymore. It just means it's not working for that particular situation. We all get tripped up. Sorry, we all get tripped up with triggers, and there's no way around that. It's how we navigate them that makes all the difference in the world. Last thing, I know you had an issue with your truck before. I know your husband had an issue, multiple issues with his truck, the truck driving job. I almost want to say, and I don't know if this has happened or has happened. It's like he's stuck at home. And it's like on one hand, you miss him when he's gone. And on the other hand, it's driving you crazy when he's home. Trust me, I understand both of these. But there's a lady in spirit going, you want him there, you don't want him there. You gotta pick one. And it's like I've been in a situation, in that very same situation multiple times. And I kind of have to look at myself and go, what am I'm complaining about both? Like I don't, what's gonna make me happy? You know? And maybe I think that a lot of it is just getting into this routine of always seeing everything negatively that might have an impact on that. So instead, try and focus on the positives of both. Um, instead of the negatives of both. Like for instance, when my husband's here, his crap is everywhere and constantly tripping over. I mean, there's not a lot of room to boot, but I'm constantly tripping over his stuff all the time. And he just takes over a whole room and his shit's everywhere and it smells like feet and I don't like it. When he's gone all the time, it's just like, God, what a lovely marriage. I'm by myself all the time, you know? But I also tell people who are married to truck drivers or married to people in the business that we're in right now. And I always tell people, when he's gone, I get to watch whatever I want on TV. I have all kinds of time to do whatever I want. I don't have to cater to him. I don't have to listen to him needing what men need all the time. I don't have to feed him. And when he is here, I get to enjoy his company because I'm not annoyed by the things that we're annoyed by when you're married and see somebody every single day. So it's a constant reminder to love both rather than get irritated with both at the same time, if that makes sense. King of Wands in reverse. There's a lot of kings coming up today. And the King of Wands, I'm sorry, that's not the king. That's the Knight of Wands. Okay, well, that one hasn't come up today. In reverse, the wands are the fire element of the minor cards. The Knight of Wands in this position indicates delays, need for patience, sometimes aggressive tendencies. So first of all, next week, we move into the shadow period of the next Mercury retrograde, which is not in Scorpio. Thank goodness for that. But it is starting off in Virgo and moving into Leo. Both of these signs are very ego-driven signs. So, and what we know about Mercury retrogrades is they cause delays all the time. So, with that being said, it doesn't mean that they don't happen the week before the shadow period. There is an element of that. But also, two things. I look at delays as happening for a reason. Sometimes we need to take more time for things to manifest the way that they need to, like timing is everything. Also, sometimes delays happen because we're not ready or what we're waiting on is not ready for us. So, patience, this is always a good time to exercise your patience. You might as well start learning this week because you're going to have a lot more once we hit this next 5 weeks with the Mercury retrograde thing happening and all that stuff. It's almost like it gives you a bit more time to prepare than everybody else, if that makes sense, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But also, what was the rest of it? I remember the delays part, need for patience. The aggression comes from not having patience and wanting it now. And I'm sick and tired of waiting. We all get there too. That's actually a lot of energy being put out for something that you have no control over. And why? I mean, to me, it's so much better for me to focus my energy on something else, something that I can do and finish and be productive rather than wasting it on trying to control something that I have no control over. Does that make sense? So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Theresa. No planets in Scorpio this week. Focus is on the past, and Pallas Athene continues to influence that with her warrior-like energy. And there's a couple of things here. First of all, we are heading into the shadow period of the Mercury retrograde next week. It starts off in Virgo, ends in Leo. Both signs are very self-centered and egotistical. So a lot of that kind of nonsense is going to come up during these Mercury retrogrades. On top of the usual delays and communication breakdowns and issues like that. So a couple of different things here. One, I am concerned that Pallas Athene's sort of fighting energy you might be fighting things that you have no control over. And when you're fighting things that you have no control over, you rarely ever win. And it's kind of using your energy in a way that it goes against you rather than is helpful to you, if that makes sense. The other thing is, it's not that you're fighting against the past or what's happened, but I do see triggers from the past that continue to keep coming up. And this might have to do with your siblings, honestly. And the aftermath of all of that. It's like you finally think that they're gone, and then boom, one of them just shows up again. And it brings up all this frustration every single time because it's not bringing up frustration of now, it's bringing up a whole lot of past frustration. And it's definitely in your best interests to bring it up and let it go. Just it's up and let it go. Because there's nothing you can do about it. You can't change who they are. You can't change who they were 20 years ago. You can't change how they deal with things, regardless of whether you think it's a smart or stupid way of dealing with it, right? It's like politics right now. Everybody is stuck in their own view of why things are the way that they are. Not one person actually has any fact behind it because nobody that's feeding what's going on is feeding facts. So people are just arguing over something that there shouldn't be an argument about, and it's got everybody on edge. So I feel like by doing this release daily, maybe even several times a day, it's going to help you to release some of the burdens of the stupid little crap that you've had to deal with since your mom passed away, if that makes sense. Because I see a really busy schedule for you. And again, I just said Mercury's going right into the shadow period of the retrograde next week. That means if you're traveling, there's going to be travel delays everywhere. I work at the airport now, so I can see where planes are delayed all the time for various crazy reasons. We even had I'm sure you've heard of it, Microsoft got hacked or a glitch or something, shut down an entire airline. People are showing up with flights that they're just canceled. Nobody told them the flight was canceled. It's just there's nobody at the ticket counter. There's just nothing. It's like ghosts, literally it was there. It was Spirit Airlines, obvious. It was just kind of ironic. And boom, there's nobody there to explain this. There's nothing going on. It's almost as if the airline shut its doors and closed down, which is honestly what I thought at first. And then I realized later what was actually happening. So extra patience is always a good idea at the airport, but it's a good idea as a whole because when we are in the state of overwhelmed and overworked, we don't have a lot of patience. And that means that we start to get we start to have old patterns of dealing with problems coming up and not necessarily in a good way. We start to see a lot more triggers coming up. Again, meditation, so incredibly important. Um, so incredibly important in terms of keeping yourself in as relaxed state as possible to get through the craziness that is ultimately going to ensue because that is how life is and it will always be. If that makes sense. The sun. This is a great card. You see how they're there and they're naked and they're in love with each other and the sun is out and it's nice and warm and it's beautiful and everything is great. It's a very positive card. And one thing that is for sure is in a situation that you're in, especially with your husband and his health issues, there's not a whole lot of time for that togetherness anymore with all the things that you have going on and all the things that he has going on. It's always a good idea to make that time. The sun in this position indicates success and fulfillment, attainment of goals, health, wealth, and happiness. So you're there. You've been running towards that goal for a while. It's literally right there in front of you. Don't let the little shit get in the way. Okay? It's literally just a waste of time. You don't have time to waste. You don't have energy to waste. You don't want to. Celebrate your success. You work damn hard, woman, and you deserve it. That's what I have for you. Moving on to Jillian, Pallas Athene is no longer retrograde, which means she is fighting fit again. And her focus is on the past. Now, just obviously fighting what happened doesn't really get you anywhere because it's already happened. You can't change it. If we could, things would be a lot different, but we can't, no matter how hard we try. Why we continue in these patterns, knowing this, I don't know, but we're humans and nobody said that humans made any sense at all. What you can do is fight against those cords, keeping you in a place that you do not want to continue to be in. For instance, mental health. Let's talk about mental health for a minute because it is important. There's a lot of mental health issues in this family. I think we've talked about that. But a lot of the reason why there's a lot of mental health issues in this family is because there's a whole lot of self-centered, egotistical bullshit in this family. And you'll notice that the ones that have mental health issues happen to be the ones that are always going, well, what about me? Well, what about me? Who cares about me? Who's paying attention to me? Who's giving me stuff, right? And those people, if you give them something, they just build an expectation for you to keep giving more and more and more. And they suck you freaking dry every single time. It makes me crazy. Okay. Literally makes me crazy. And I don't want to deal with that anymore. And I do deal with it on a regular basis because I happen to see two of those people twice a week. And I'm not talking about Gammy and I'm not talking about Lord Jean, although she does dance the fence on that one. Gammy does not. So without naming names, you know the other two people that are now living in that house. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The point is that I could get mad at how they act and they're not directing that towards me, and that doesn't do me any good. So when they do direct it toward me, I shut the door on it. Nope, not my problem. This isn't my circus. These aren't my monkeys. And, I'm not responsible for taking care of grown ass adults. Sorry, but I'm not, I'm having to learn not even my children are my responsibility even more. I am always there to help them, of course, but I am not responsible for powdering their little bottoms anymore. They're grown ass men. It's their job to figure it out, not my job to hold their hand through the process. And a lot of times it takes us a really long time to get to that point before we realize that it's in our best interest to let that go. But what I'm saying is that you can't fight against what happened. You can fight against what is going to happen. And that's where those boundaries are extremely important, as usual, to continue to put those boundaries down on those people that tend to be feeling like they are sucking you dry, because you don't want to keep putting yourself in a position to be sucked dry by these people over and over again. It leaves nothing left for you and what you want to accomplish in your life. Okay. Let's talk about what you want to accomplish in your life here really quick. You probably don't even know, and that's okay. Nobody is saying that you, pardon me, should know by now. I didn't figure it out for many years, and I'm still figuring it out at 47 years old. Okay. Whatever they say you're supposed to do, pardon me, doesn't matter. There is no what you're supposed to do. You do need to take care of yourself and be an adult and be responsible as much as humanly possible. That is a thing, yes. But there's no right or wrong way to do it. So don't put so much pressure on yourself to figure it out. It doesn't need to be figured out. It needs to be whatever that thing is, you've always been told to, that's what you need to do. And yes, it could take some time. Yes, you may not know exactly which direction to go in. All of these different things doesn't matter, right? I think we overthink things too much and that gets in the way and it freaks us out. So we just get lazy and we don't do it, right? I even thought about going to school to become a psychologist, to actually get certified in psychology, to become a therapist. And it's an 8-year long process. And I did think about it. I'd be 55 years old by the time I am done and actually certified, which is pretty old to start a career like that. But I landed on there is no time for me to go to school. And that's kind of why I decided against it. I wish I had thought of it earlier. Um, because and the reason why I came to that conclusion was the amount of mental health issues going on in my family. I would like to be able to help other people more than I already do overcome these issues and these problems, even though I already am. It's just this gives me an extra little certification. I don't need the certification. I'm not doing therapy, so it's okay, right? And but it's not a bad idea for you if you choose to consider that. Okay. I'm not forcing you to do anything. The Nine of Swords is the card that I just picked for you. And I noticed when we were chit-chatting on the phone the other day that you have a new boyfriend or an old new boyfriend. It's not the same one that I met, though. I don't think it is. At least it didn't look like it. That's fine. Nine of Swords in this position indicates worries and fears are being blown out of proportion. Need to worry less. This is exactly what I'm talking about getting in your head, okay? Too much time thinking about it confuses things, you freak out, you hide under the covers, you smoke a bunch of weed, and you just stop thinking about all of it, okay? You have to just do it and keep doing it. And it's going to be hard. Life is always going to be hard. You can't avoid life being hard. But I tell you what, it's a lot harder without a degree than it is with one. I'm just saying, in terms of finances. So if you think about it in that way, it's 8 years is a long time. But eventually it's over. And then you're making pretty damn good money. And then you don't have to rely on anybody else. It will, of course, have its own new set of problems, but you can deal with those as and when they come, just like everything else. So that's what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Peg, we have no planets in Sagittarius at all. Focus continues to be on the mind and how the mind works. We don't even have the moon. We have nothing. Zip, zero, zills, nothing going on in Sagittarius. Just focusing on the mind and all the millions of different directions that those thoughts go in. Two things I want to share with you. I've had some ideas, and I've been obsessing over those ideas, and I haven't done a damn thing about them, but I've been obsessing over them. And then every so often, I get a message from somebody else. Hey, do you want to do this? Whoa, that was my idea. It's like the universe is like, would you just stop thinking about it already and frickin' do it? Okay. That just happened this last week, as a matter of fact. And it was awesome when it did, because it's like, one, it's validation, but two, it's sort of like the universe going, you know what, we gave you the idea. We didn't give it to you to sit on it and think about it for 20 years. Okay. We gave it to you so you could actually do something with it. And when something like that happens in the way that it does, it's kind of a sign that they're done waiting. Okay, fine. I'll just present the information here in this way. Which I kind of see possibly happening in a similar way for you sometime this week. The other thing is, I do keep seeing you overthinking something, and it's just like around and around and around like a hamster wheel. You're exhausting yourself, you're frustrating yourself. I mean, to the point where you're getting irritated with yourself. Trust me, I know that one very well too. Um, you know the answer. And it may not be exactly what you want to hear. Doesn't mean that it's not the answer, even if you don't want to hear it. If that makes sense. And I'm not sure. Part of me says this is a career thing, but part of me says it's a health thing also. Either something that not that there is ill health, but either this is something that you need to implement into your day-to-day schedule for health reasons, like exercise or something like that. Or um that there is something that's been on your mind that you need to have checked and you haven't had it checked yet. You've just been going through the motions in your mind of all the different things that it could be, which it would be just so much easier to go into the doctor and find out what it is. Scarier, yes, but I don't think it's what you think. Not as bad as what you think. Better to go now and find out. than wait and have it become more of a problem. I want to say procrastination comes into this as well, in terms of filling out some sort of paperwork or something. And so it could be around your health insurance more than your actual health, if that makes sense. Like you really need to do this and it's just boring and you don't want to do it and you've been putting it off. The other thing is you really need to start writing down these ideas when they come up so you don't forget them. You don't have to implement everything right away. And there's something about reconnecting with someone you haven't connected with in a really long time also there. I'm going to pull your card here. It's the Five of Swords in reverse. There's a card about somebody coming back from the past. I was curious if that was the card. Five of Swords in reverse. Victory over personal problems, slanders, or jealousy. You're on the right track. And it could be a little bit of old self-sabotage patterns that are just coming up and sort of throwing you into this overthinking pattern, if that makes sense. Which is not uncommon. You know, when you go through a healing process, this tends to happen because you're never fully healed. There's the universe always provides these opportunities to kind of trip you up and trap you and throw you back into the bad habits, okay, which you don't need. So remind yourself, this hamster wheel is not what's going to help me. What's going to help me is just figuring out what I need to do and do it. And don't think about what you need to do, because that's what's going to get you stuck in that hamster wheel again. Find out what you need to do and do it. That's what I have for you. I think this person that pops up from the past is not a bad thing either. It's not like, oh my God, I thought I got away from this person. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's something that you're really going to be excited about. So that's what I have for you. Finally, Mama Sherri. No planets in Sagittarius this week. Focus continues to be on the mind and how the mind works. Sometimes that's overthinking. Sometimes that's coming up with a bunch of brilliant ideas and then following them up with a bunch of reasons why it's not going to work right now. We both know. We both know. Just because you have an idea and you don't know how to implement it doesn't mean you should table it. I actually am the victim of that a lot. And unless I get really excited about it, I don't really put a lot of energy into it. When my brain says this is going to be a lot of information and overwhelming, I tend to hide. One of the things about working for the studio that has worked in my favor is you can't hide from these things. They need to be done. They need to be addressed. And so that's kind of helped take that excuse away in this particular realm with my readings and stuff. That's a whole different story. I'm going to be calling you this week because I do have something I want to talk to you about in terms of that. An opportunity that might be really kind of cool for both of us, and an opportunity for us to work together again, which I miss a lot. And I think you do too. So this might provide an opportunity to do that again, after not being able to, or not doing it for a really long time, and it might be good for both of us. But in terms of the mind, I think sometimes because you live alone, because you spend a lot of time by yourself, you start to spend too much time in your head. And when you spend too much time in your head, just as well as anybody else, in fact, probably more, than anybody else. What a horrendous trap that is. And what a scary place that can be, and how confusing it makes everything. So I feel like this week is a good week to monitor that and to really focus on how confusing it gets when you overthink things rather than just coming up with the solution or the plan that will help fix that problem, if that makes sense. Because I'm also being shown you flip-flopping back and forth over an issue. It's like it could be actually around someone specific where you just get angry and you're like, I got to get away from this person. And then you're like, no, it's not their fault. They're actually not that bad and blah. Won't say that this is typical narcissistic victim behavior, but it is. Because the person in question will drive you to the point where you just can't take it anymore, and then fish you back in before you can actually get away, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that is it, but that is the pattern, and it may be a familiar pattern that you didn't realize was familiar, if that makes sense. And I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, by the way. Knight of Cups. Look at how successful he is. He's celebrating. He's got the horse. Even the horse is celebrating. Cups are emotions. They're the water element of the minor cards. The Knight of Cups in this position indicates a gallant man. Marriage or proposal of an emotional nature. Are you not telling me something? Partnership. Partnership is also comes up around this card, and it doesn't necessarily mean a marriage, it doesn't mean anything sexual. Partnership is partnership. And a business partnership can be an emotional thing, depending on who it's with. Just saying. And partnerships are oftentimes a really good thing, depending on who the partnership is with. So I think it's probably more that. I mean, if you are dating a guy and he's proposing marriage, I'm okay with that too. I just don't see that as being it. Okay. And not because I'm being delusional and I don't want to see it either. I just don't really feel that that's really what it is. So love you. Call you this week. That's what I have for you. Okay, I'm wrapping things up. I will see you guys next week. You guys better make it a great week, because next week we are entering the shadow period of that Mercury retrograde, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to make it a great week. Not impossible, but difficult. I'll see you guys next week.